So good to have you here.
It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
We can hear you loud and clear. All right. Well, we can kickstart this session. I'd love to do a little intro on you. I mean, there's so much going on in the space of EY and Polygon, and people talking about this integration and how it's going to revolutionize the way enterprises kind of see things moving forward. Paul Brody is really at the forefront of the space, and we're very excited to hear the developments that you've been working on, everything in regard to with the integration with Polygon, which is really enticing because there's so many questions that a lot of people in the community have to ask you. We know that you're the global blockchain leader and advocate for Ernst & Young, and you've been in this space for a really long time now, and we're keen to hear you speak and shed some light on things that we have a lot of questions on.
Fantastic. Well, it's wonderful to be here. As I was introduced wonderfully, I'm Paul Brody. I'm the global blockchain leader at EY, the accounting and professional services firm formerly known as Ernst & Young. And I'm actually coming to you today from London, actually here for meeting with our research and development team who are working on Polygon Nightfall. What I want to take a chance to talk to you today about is not about the details of Polygon Nightfall, because we had a webinar recently on that. Really more talk a little bit about sort of how we think about and why we're investing in public blockchains, the Ethereum ecosystem, Polygon, and how we see kind of the future of the blockchain ecosystem. And I have got some slides to share, which I'm going to do now. And let's see here at the share screen, and hopefully everybody can see those. All right, I got a thumbs up. So I'm going to proceed. Let's see here. You know, Ethereum's future, right? Massive scalability and privacy. And I really want to talk about sort of the intersection of those two, because this is kind of really the driver of our thinking, our investment, why we're working on all of this technology. So blockchains, everybody knows this, but we often forget this. They're built on cryptography, but they don't really support privacy, right? The way that they work is that, you know, the consensus algorithm sort of depends on the ability of everybody to check each other's work, right? That's kind of the foundation of that algorithm. What it means, though, is that in the default state, all of your data is public, right? It's not attached to your name per se, but, you know, a little bit like the internet, right? It's not hard to figure out sometimes who the participants are. Now, if you think about things like privacy, all complex business agreements, all the ones, you know, the kinds of agreements that our clients do, basically kind of work like this. I've got money, you've got stuff, and we are exchanging those two under the terms of an agreement. And the challenge with that is a couple of things. Number one, most companies consider those agreements and the prices they pay for products and services or financial assets to be among their most valuable trade secrets, right? The knowledge of what they're buying, how much they're buying, where they're getting it delivered is all super sensitive information. On top of that, the information itself, there's also just a pattern of what they're acting on and where they're getting ready for things. So enterprises look at public blockchains and they say, in their current form, in their traditional form, we really can't participate in doing anything more than, say, buying a lot of tokens, right? Now, a mixer, right, the kind that sort of mixes tokens together, can provide you with a lot of privacy, provided you have a lot of tokens being mixed in, and provided you're just doing the token. But the minute you go from, hey, I'm just buying a token, to I want to engage in an agreement between a very specific buyer and a very specific seller, you need a lot more privacy than you get from a mixer. And so very early on in our experience around blockchain, we started to spend a lot of time thinking about, okay, how are we going to enable privacy and how are we going to make it scale, right? And if you think about complex business agreements, they are really challenging to implement under zero knowledge, and they're also very, very expensive to run in a layer one ecosystem. Now, I'll give you a very good example of something we've actually built and are deploying, which is something called EY Ops-Chain Contract Manager. And what Contract Manager does is it allows companies to set up procurement agreements on the public Ethereum blockchain. So the buyer can say, listen, I want to buy a bunch of stuff from you, and we are going to agree on things like total volume, discounts, perhaps rebates. And then the seller is going to say, okay, we agree to that. And then the buyer is going to have their own subsidiaries and maybe other authorized buyers, and the seller is going to have their own distributors and authorized distributors. All those logic is going to go into a blockchain smart contract, but it can't just be a simple Solidity contract. It actually has to be developed as a zero knowledge circuit, so a mathematical proof. And running those on the public Ethereum mainnet on a layer 1 is impossibly expensive. Just to give you a sense, right? The first kind of prototype supply chain that we built on the public Ethereum under zero knowledge, it cost us about $3,000 in gas to do a sample set of transactions. And that was 3 years ago. Gas prices were a lot lower back then. So imagine what that potentially would cost today. The answer is on a layer 1, it's impossible to implement, right? So not only can we not implement complex logic on a layer 1, right, but also we can't easily tokenize the inputs and outputs of this process and feed it into scale. So if I think about like the procurement process, right, if I have a purchase order or I have sold you an asset, I want to be able to deliver those assets into other DeFi services. So the volume of outputs and transactions starts to become really, really large. And if you think about something like a car, even a relatively simple one has, as the bill of materials has potentially hundreds of tokens that represent high value assets such as batteries, computers, displays, steering wheels. If you really want to model your supply chain from an end-to-end perspective, you are talking about the need for ultimately, I believe, hundreds of millions of transactions per day. Right, tracking things as they move from raw material to manufacturing, transportation, warehousing, sales, and support. So building a global blockchain ecosystem that supports privacy and industrial business models at scale is not a simple thing, right? Now, this was pretty easy or fun and interesting in 2016 or 2017 or 2018, right, when transaction costs were very low. But very quickly, that became kind of infeasible, and we always knew it would be. And so we knew early on that some form of layer 2 was going to be necessary. And if we think about it, we've been talking about layer 2s probably for 3 or 4 years, but it's really only in the last 12 to 14 months with the arrival of the Polygon commit chain that we've made meaningful progress towards kind of solving the scalability challenges that come with running a public, truly decentralized blockchain. And what's exciting for me is, 12 to 18 months ago, I would sit down routinely with large corporate clients and they would say, Paul, we're very interested in public blockchains, but fundamentally, we're really scared of the incredible variability in gas costs. Today, I can sit down and tell them with a lot of confidence that I don't really think that gas costs are an issue anymore, right? This is just one Polygon commit chain. Ultimately, you can build many different commit chains, right? Each one of them is capable of doing 7, 8, 9 times the current transaction volume in the Ethereum ecosystem. On top of that, we are planning with Polygon to build a set of permissioned industry chains that will allow enterprises to have a anchored sidechain connected to the mainnet with predictable gas fees. And for them, what's really a lot of enterprises still really sort of struggling through the regulatory requirements to be in a fully public blockchain. Now, I believe very strongly that the ideal end state for all enterprises is a fully public permissionless ecosystem, right? They worried about the internet in the same way, but I always reminded the internet is a public permissionless system, right? So too is the Ethereum ecosystem. So ultimately, I believe that we will get there. But what's great about the Polygon ecosystem is we can build on the commit chain, we can build permissioned side chains using the Polygon technology, and we can integrate across all of those chains. We can do it at scale, and we can do it without worrying about gas costs becoming an obstacle to scalability or privacy or complexity. Now, for enterprise users, we've been investing in privacy for quite some time. And I want to share with you kind of some of the things that we are doing. The foundation of what we're doing, and the biggest chunk of work that we have done, is a technology called Nightfall, which we have developed and donated into the public domain. As many of you may know, Nightfall is currently on its third version. So it's called Nightfall 3. And it's a zero knowledge proof based protocol. The Nightfall 3 is a ZK optimistic rollup with privacy. So it supports transfers and payments under privacy using as an optimistic zero knowledge rollup. And that really drives transaction costs way down. And it's the foundation for the Polygon Nightfall announced layer 2 that's going to run on top of the Ethereum ecosystem. And we will have some pretty cool news in the next couple months about availability. Nightfall addresses a big part of the equation in terms of enterprise and business requirements for privacy, which is transfers and payments, but it doesn't do the whole picture. You still need business logic privacy as well. So if I come back to my example, I've got money, you've got stuff, we're exchanging them. Nightfall covers the exchange of money and stuff. What it doesn't do is cover the business rules of the contract. And if you think about the contract, right, if you're paying $10 for a widget and you transfer $10 and you get one widget, everybody knows, if it's done publicly, how much you paid per widget. But if you transfer those privately, it's a secret unless the contract is written in a clear, in which case you all know now what the pricing was, right? So what Starlight does is it's our goal to build what I would call a general purpose compiler for zero knowledge circuit. So you'll be able to take a Solidity contract and mark it up and then compile it into a zero knowledge circuit. Now, Starlight is really in the prototype stage. It's available. You can go out and test it. If you take an ERC20 or an ERC721 contract and you mark it up correctly and you put it into Starlight, what you will actually get is Nightfall. And that's actually our original test case. But our goal is to start adding a lot more logic over time. We've done a couple of other things. We've deployed a location ERP, so we're proposing a standardized methodology for attaching location information to tokens. That's not quite so privacy focused, but it's really essential for enterprises that want to think about physical assets. And then we've joined the baseline protocol, which I think is going to be very important as a set of tools that support the public blockchain and primarily the Ethereum ecosystem. And everything we do, kind of if you add all those pieces up, they're all based on the idea that we want to make it safe and reliable for enterprises to use the public Ethereum ecosystem. Now, in terms of EY's commitment, we are very focused on this. And I think much more so than a lot of other firms, we have made some very, very focused bets around the Ethereum ecosystem. So we've been around as EY as a blockchain entity for 6 years now. We've probably invested over the last 6 years almost $100 million in blockchain technology. And we achieved a major milestone last year, which is we had our first year of more than $100 million in blockchain revenue at EY. Now, in the context of a $30 billion kind of global professional services firm, it's not very much. So nobody treats me with any respect at the office. But as a blockchain business, I like to say we're actually going to become a real business soon. And the business is growing. We've got a commitment from our firm to spend another $100 million for the next 3 years investing in technology, building out products. And again, a key focus of our work is going to be the privacy and scalability work that we are doing in cooperation with Polygon. Underlying our approach is a kind of a simple idea, which is that every business and every process can be moved and ultimately will move onto the blockchain ecosystem, right? Because you can represent all items of value as tokens. You can represent all the interactions as smart contracts. And when you attach analytics, you can understand exactly what's going on. And so our goal is to enable as many of these problems and to pull them together into a set of really useful industrial applications. So a really good example I'm very proud of is Peroni. So Peroni is Italy's largest beer maker, and we have a system that's set up in place where every time they create a new batch of beer, we mint them a unique non-fungible token onto the Polygon commit chain. And what's great about this is Peroni doesn't have to know anything about blockchain ecosystems. All they have to do is click a button and it goes through blockchain.ey.com through an API and out into the Polygon commit chain. So we're taking for enterprises all the complexity of blockchain, all the issues around privacy, scalability, and just making them, simplifying them dramatically. That's in the area of tokens, right? And token creation and transfer. What we're also really proud of is the work that we're doing with Microsoft around the Xbox video game network. So many of you may not be aware of this, but EY is building, has built the blockchain that allows Microsoft to convert their traditional blockchain software purchasing, their traditional software purchasing contracts for video games into blockchain-based smart contracts. And the results of this transition have been incredibly successful, right? It used to take 45 days for Microsoft to be able to produce an account statement for a company in this ecosystem. Today, basically, it's about 4 minutes from software purchase in the Xbox online store to revenue recognition. The whole system, including all the costs of development, first of a kind work, et cetera, it's still about half the cost to administer than the current system. And it's really improved Microsoft's relationship with all of their software suppliers because the logic and the process for how they get paid and how their rules of their contract are being applied are much clearer, much simpler, and much more transparent. Finally, Audit. This is kind of the original EY business, right? It's our main professional services business. This has been growing at an absolutely blistering pace, right? Our revenues, our historical revenue growth rate is over 100% a year. The client base, in terms of number of clients, is grew more than 30% last year, and they obviously are also spending a great deal more. We cover about a third of the top 20 crypto exchanges and half the top custodians, and we expect about half of our clients just in banking and financial services to be doing business transactions on the public Ethereum ecosystem by 2030. That's our forecast, is that by 2030, about half of all business transactions and half or more than half of our clients will be doing those transactions on the public Ethereum blockchain ecosystem. Now, in terms of where we deliver our product, all of the work that we do, and we deliver a lot of different services and products, they all come together at blockchain.ey.com. This is our online platform where we've merged together all of our service delivery applications. So we've got two major application products there. The first is called EY OpsChain. OpsChain is about doing things on the blockchain. So we can do business procurement agreements. We can do product traceability, right? Our biggest product traceability client today is a pharmaceutical company. They're generating 60,000 NFTs a day, one for every one of their products that comes off the production line. We can attach global trade origin certificates. We can do public finance management, for example. So that's doing things on the blockchain. And one of the things that I'm really, really proud of is if you kind of use blockchain.ey.com or you use our blockchain services, literally at a click of a button, you can say, I'm going to be on the Ethereum mainnet. I'm going to be on the Ethereum testnet. I can go to the Mumbai testnet for Polygon. I can go to the Polygon commit chain. And when they're available, you'll be able to just pick from a drop-down box of like, hey, I want to add a network. I want to add a network, a private permissioned Polygon commit chain, for example, any kind of other private side chain, but we make it really simple to interact with all these digital ecosystems. The second thing that we do is blockchain analytics. And the idea here is kind of really coming out of our history as a professional services and audit firm, is we help companies understand what's going on in their blockchain business. First and foremost, this means financial statement audits, but we've got a few other things in there as well. We've got a tool called our Bitcoin Explorer and Visualizer, which allows you to look at the transaction history of the Bitcoin blockchain. We have a visualization tool that literally allows you to see where the Bitcoin goes. And it was actually built for our forensics practice based on work that we did for a major exchange that went bankrupt and was sort of, the bankruptcy was driven by what appears to have been a very large fraud. And we were appointed by the court to take over. And the first question that we were asked is, show us where all the money went. And that's what we did. By the way, if you want to hear the full story of this, not so much of EY's involvement, but all the personalities and the drama inside this company, I highly recommend this. An excellent podcast. It's called Exit Scam. And it's a really excellent podcast that tells the story of this immense blockchain fraud. I tell people, anybody, if you are buying any kind of digital asset token, any kind of crypto asset, please, doesn't matter whether it's EY or somebody else, but make sure that the company you're buying from is actually audited, because a big part of what we do is very simple. It's called transaction reconciliation. Did the company that you transacted with, if you gave them money to buy something for you, did they buy it or not? And the truth is, although a lot of us like to use decentralized exchanges, you need a centralized on-ramp, right? Those exist. You have to have the on-ramps. There's very few other ways to really get your fiat currency on-chain. So we do public network analytics, we do explore visualization, tax calculation we do in the US market, and then we have a really cool tool that's maturing very quickly called Smart Contract and Token Review. And what that does today is it lets you test a token against the ERC20 standard. But what it's going to be doing soon is a couple of really important things. Number one, test it against any kind of process requirements, any output requirements, and very importantly, we've built a transaction simulation tool that allow you to simulate any transaction and test every contract and every trade before you execute. So those services are available at blockchain.ey.com. And also there, you'll find links to all of our education materials and definitely updates as we go forward in terms of the work that we're doing with Polygon. That brings me to the end of my talk today. And what I'd like to do is I've got a few minutes left before the next speaker, and I want to have a moment for Q&A and discussion if there's any questions. Yeah, so thank you all.
That was excellent, Paul. Thank you so much for sharing. That was very in-depth. If anyone has any questions, please drop them in the chat, or even feel free to unmute yourself. Paul, you mentioned how people at EY are probably laughing at you because you have the smallest business in there. It's quite funny because that's how it typically starts, right? There's an immune system that kind of attacks anything new and revolutionary. So I wanted to ask you, how long has it taken you to build out a team and build out that kind of infrastructure to set the pace for what enterprise solutions are going to look like in the future?
So I've been super fortunate here in that, as much as there have been skeptics and there is this immune system and I deal with a lot of jokes, and it's probably not helped by my attire, but overall, we've received a lot of support, right? There's no way I could have gotten $100 million in investment over the last 5 or 6 years without that support. So in general, the level of partnership has been great. You got to deal with the skeptics. You got to spend a lot of time being patient. And I can't lie, I have been given coaching many times on trying not to express my fury or impatience with people who still don't get it. But overall, I would say it's been a remarkably positive and constructive set of support from within the business. What is super complicated and very challenging is regulatory compliance. We have a large regulatory compliance organization. They spend a lot of time worrying about sort of all the rules. And unlike a sort of pure crypto startup, right, regulators don't look at us and just say, what are you doing in crypto or blockchain? They look at the whole picture. So probably I would say what we do here gets subjected to a lot more scrutiny than probably most startups.
Thanks for that, Paul. We have 2 questions over here. How is EY leveraging NFT is the first one.
So how we're leveraging NFTs. So a couple of things. So first of all, NFTs, we can build them, we can mint them, we can, create them and so on. And that part is easy. We got really interested in NFTs, and I will not confess to being genius enough to see their future for art. We got excited about them 2 years ago because they're industrial assets. If you think about your car, your iPhone, your computer, it's a MacBook or it's an iPhone or it's a Tesla or it's an F-150 truck, but it has a VIN number, it has a serial number. And so it's in a class, but the minute you drive it or use it, it's yours. And it's slightly different now from everybody else's because it's been used, because you own it. Or if it's a drug, it's from a different batch. So you can't use an ERC20 for that because there's no way to differentiate. That's a fungible token. So almost all industrial assets, property, many of those things are unique non-fungible tokens. And so we have to have the ability to sort of plan. And our client that's doing 60,000 NFTs a day, those are individual batches of drugs and blood product, for example.
Awesome. Thanks for answering that, Paul. The second question to that is, why are you a firm believer that public blockchain is the future?
So I think I'm talking to a really sophisticated and blockchain-friendly crowd. So I'll just be super blunt and say, private blockchains are pointless. What is the point of a centralized, decentralized ledger? Like, I don't get it. I can't seem to explain to some people that this seems kind of entirely nonsensical, if you ask me. I've used much harsher language, and this is where I get coaching, and I'm encouraged to go to anger management. So this is why I've got all kinds of very patient and thoughtful explanations about why centralized, decentralized ledgers don't work. But I think fundamentally, there's just no point. I mean, if 10 companies could agree on a single party to run a service for them, then it would be so much cheaper and faster to just build a Web 2.0 product. I tell people a lot, I tell them, there's nothing that you can do on a blockchain, and this is painfully true, there's nothing you can do on a blockchain that you cannot do with a web server. The only thing that's different about this is that on a blockchain, you can create a level playing field with no centralized control. And the question is, how important is that to you? I would argue that in a software world, with a winner-take-all economy, that's the most important thing. If you want to guarantee a level playing field, it's the only way to do it.
Totally. Ankur has a question over here.
In case you can't tell, I've answered this question a few times before.
I love the anger management bit. I think a lot of us in the community go through that, right? The explaining. Ankur has a question here. Would we ever see an EY token at any point in the future?
There is actually an EY token out there. It's called EY Ops Coin, and I think you can find it in Etherscan. It is a zero value test token that we run in some of our things. But no, I don't see an EY token, although we have discussed compensating some of our partners in crypto because we do get paid in crypto from time to time. And we have discussed, shall we just distribute some of that crypto directly to the partners instead of cashing it out? So far, we've always cashed it out, but it might not always be that way in the future.
Awesome. Paul, what's your dream and vision for people leveraging this technology? What's the world you want to see?
I am in this business. I will tell you what I tell all the people on my team. I am in this business to change how the entire world does business. If you have spent, and I have spent 20 years in the technology business, we spend an inordinate amount of our time administering things. There's a whole category of sort of enterprise value. If you go read like a financial report, there's a category called SG&A, selling, general, and administrative. SG&A is this bucket in which we pour useful stuff like R&D and kind of useless stuff like matching up purchase orders. Well, we could make the entire, and by the way, for most companies, that SG&A component it's like 25 to 30% of all of their expenses. right? A big chunk of that is useless repetitive activity of matching up purchase orders and doing administrative work. We could make the world a vastly richer place, and we could create a digital commerce ecosystem that is much fairer to small companies and participants and individuals than the one we have now by moving that to the blockchain. So we would be a richer world, we would be a fairer world if we move to the blockchain. And my goal is nothing less than that. As I always tell people inside of EY, I am playing to win. I'm not here to make a little business or just to kind of generate a little bit of income. We are playing to win and to transform the market and how the world does business.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Paul. We're here to support you. The unit team feel the same way. We have share the same principles and ethos. Rooting for you, and we'll be following you in your social handles. Thank you so much for your half an hour.
Thank you for inviting me. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Have a great day.